Part 8. The Temple, Church, Tomb of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius. The Empire of Frostreach decides to use the power of all of their ice-related stuff and especially the Ice Legion to attempt to infiltrate the ruins of San Marino in order to retrieve the core sacred relic they need to reform the true sacred relic they need in order to stand a chance against the Dark Emperor from the Temple, Church, Tomb of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius in San Marino in Europe, which has become increasingly more dangerous over the centuries, since the era of the Empire of Sanctity that their empire was formed by distant remnants of let alone the core sacred relic
itself, which is said to be guarded by the Avatar of the Waves, the Avatar of the Winds, and the Avatar of the Dragon Flight, which were originally summoned by the Empire of Sanctity, absorbed into Emperor Marcus Aurelius as part of the ritual, to allow him to ascend into being the God Emperor, and afterwards were left there by God Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself, dormant, only to awaken when someone is trying to retrieve the core sacred relic he placed them there to guard, the avatars being physical embodiments of the elements themselves, the Avatar of the Waves being the embodiment of the elemental forces of water and earth, the Avatar of the Winds being the embodiment of the elemental forces of fire and air, and the Avatar of the Dragon Flight being the embodiment of the elemental forces of gold and air and possibly also fire, earth and water. All of the avatars are over 100 feet tall. Their forces begin their march towards the continent of Europe, crossing the great oceans in a massive armada of ice ships, ice dragons, and other ice-themed military vehicles, while the Ice Legion spearheads the expedition, carving a path through the icy wastes towards the ruins of San Marino. The Storm Dragon, sensing the approaching threat, takes to the skies, flying ahead to scout the ruins and report back to the Empire of Frostreach. The forces of the Empire of Frostreach make landfall on the shores of Europe, their ice-encrusted armada looming large against the backdrop of the continent. They march forth towards the ruins of San Marino, their numbers swelling as they are, joined by allied forces from neighboring nations. The Storm Dragon, returning from its scouting mission, delivers its report to the High Command of the Empire. It warns of the unholy alliance between the Avatar of the Waves, the Avatar of the Winds, and the Avatar of the Dragon Flight, who have awoken from their slumber and prepared to defend the core sacred relic with their very lives. The dragon advises caution and strategic planning, as the elemental forces they command are formidable and must not be underestimated. The Empire of Frostreach heeds the Storm Dragon's warning and begins to plan its attack. They divide their forces into 3 groups, one to confront the Avatar of the Waves, one to face the Avatar of the Winds, and one to engage the Avatar of the Dragon Flight, the Ice Legion, now bolstered by reinforcements from their allies, is tasked with infiltrating the ruins of San Marino and locating the chamber of the core sacred relic. They are thankful that they have an elemental being of their own to aid them, that being the Storm Dragon, the weakened version of the ancient and legendary storm Leviathan originally summoned by the Empire of Frosthaven amongst 3 other legendary beings, all for naught against the God Emperor Marcus Aurelius, whose descendant is the Emperor of the Empire of Frostreach. The first group of soldiers, led by the best ice mages and general, advances towards the ruins of San Marino slowly and methodically, using their powers to carve a path through the ice and snow, while their archers, mounted on the backs of ice dragons, keep a lookout for any signs of the Avatar of the Waves. The second group, led by the most skilled wind mages and general, follows a parallel course, using their elemental magic to harness the power of the wind to propel them forward, while their cavalry, riding on the backs of ice horses, scout ahead for any sign of the Avatar of the Winds. The third group, led by the bravest and most battle-hardened soldiers, accompanied by the Storm Dragon, flies towards the distant peaks of the mountains, where the temple churchdom of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius is said to be located, ready to face the Avatar of the Dragon Flight. But note, they are also prepared due to there being rumors of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius having left his undead druids of Proclian to also guard the core sacred relic. druids of Broclion, having been legendary practitioners and masters of magic and even arcane magic who had lived in the forest of Broclion, they were named after the forces of the Empire of Frostreach march ever forward, their advance unrelenting as they pushed deeper into enemy territory. The Avatar of the Waves, sensing their approach, readies its forces for battle, summoning massive tidal waves and unleashing schools of giant sea serpents upon the advancing ice dragons. The ice mages of the first group, aided by the storm dragon, counter with blasts of icy wind and powerful spells of elemental control, carving a path through the raging sea and bringing the Avatar of the Waves forces to a standstill. In the distance, the second group of soldiers, led by the wind mages and their general, counter the Avatar of the Winds, who uses its control over the atmosphere to send gusts of icy wind and blizzards against them. The ice horses and their riders, aided by the storm dragon, manage to stay ahead of the storms, keeping a safe distance from the Avatar of the Winds. They scout the terrain and find a narrow mountain pass that leads to the temple churchdom of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Meanwhile, the third group of soldiers, accompanied by the storm dragon, approaches the mountain peaks, where the Avatar of the dragon flight makes its lair. The dragon advises caution, as the Avatar is known to be cunning and dangerous. The soldiers prepare themselves for battle, ready to unleash a barrage of arrows and spells upon the Avatar's scaled hide. As they near the temple, the scouts of the second group report back to the general. They have located the entrance to the chamber, where the chamber of the core sacred relic is said to be hidden. The chamber is guarded by the undead druids of Broclion, led by the legendary archdruid Malthus. The druids wield powerful magic and control over nature, making them formidable foes. The general orders his archers and mages to prepare for battle, while the soldiers steel themselves for a fight against the undead druids. In the meantime, the first group of soldiers, aided by the storm dragon, engages the Avatar of the Waves in a fierce battle. The ice dragons dive down, claws extended, while the archers rain arrows upon the giant sea creatures. The ice mages summon icy spikes from the ground, impaling the Avatar's scaled hide. The Avatar retaliates with mighty waves that threaten to engulf the soldiers, but the storm dragon uses its elemental powers to control the water, sending the waves crashing harmlessly against the ice. The storm dragon begins charging up an attack, and the Ice Legion immediately realize what he is doing and begin to cover for him, knowing their only chance of overcoming the Avatars is for him to get the opportunity to hit that charged up attack on each of them at least once. Meanwhile, the undead druids of Broclion, led by the legendary archdruid Malthus, emerge from the temple, their skeletal forms shambling forth, their eyes glowing an unnatural blue, their hands crackling with arcane energy. The archers of the second group take aim, their arrows flying through the air, seeking to pierce the undead flesh, but finding it resistant to their attacks. The mages, however, begin to unleash a torrent of spells upon the druids, summoning elemental forces of nature to aid them in battle. The first group, still engaged with the Avatar of the Waves, continues their assault. The ice dragons dive and claw at the giant sea creatures, while the ice mages summon icy spikes from the ground, impaling the Avatar's scaled hide. The storm dragon uses its elemental powers to control the water, sending the waves crashing harmlessly against the ice. The Avatar, now weakened, is no match for the storm dragon's charged up attack, and is defeated. After this, though, the storm dragon is left drained and requires time to recover, and during this time, the Ice Legion needs to cover and protect him. The archers and mages of the second group continue their assault on the undead druids of Broclion, led by the legendary archdruid Malthus. The druids, however, are resistant to their attacks, and the mages find their spells ineffective. The soldiers engage the druids in melee combat, but are overwhelmed by their powerful magic and relentless attacks. The general realizes that they must find a way, to weaken the druids before they can defeat them. The Emperor of Frostreach finds a sacred artifact and uses it too, just like his ancestor once did. Drain the druids of Brocliand of their magic, weakening them. The archers and mages of the second group, reinvigorated by this development, renew their assault on the undead druids of Brocliand, led by the legendary archdruid Malthus. The druids, now stripped of their magic, are no match for the combined forces of the army. The archers' arrows find their marks, and the mages' spells tear through the air, striking the druids with devastating force. The soldiers engage the druids in melee combat, finishing them off and securing the victory. The general, impressed by the Emperor's bravery and cunning, promotes him on the spot, bestowing upon him the honorary title of Grand Commander of the Ice Legion. The Storm Dragon, now recovered, flies up into the air to aid against the Avatar of the Winds. The battle against the undead druids of Brocliand continues to rage. The archers and mages focus their attacks on the archdruid Malthus, knowing that if they can defeat him, the rest of the druids will crumble. The soldiers engage the druids in melee combat, using their training and weapons to try and overcome the undead warriors. The Storm Dragon, now recovered, soars through the air, using its elemental powers to control the winds to aid the soldiers in battle. It lets out a mighty roar, causing the druids to momentarily lose focus and stumble. The ice mages and dragons continue their assault on the Avatar of the Winds, using their elemental powers to weaken it further. The Storm Dragon then once again begins charging up his attack to use to defeat the Avatar of the Winds. The battle against the undead druids of Brocliand continues to rage. The archers and mages focus their attacks on the archdruid Malthus, knowing that if they can defeat him, the rest of the druids will crumble. The soldiers engage the druids in melee combat, using their training and weapons to try and overcome the undead warriors, just as the Storm Dragon is about to deliver the final blow to the Avatar of the Winds. The Ice Legion's mages are suddenly overwhelmed by a surprise attack from the druids, who have managed to steal their spellbooks and use their knowledge against them. This does not stop the Storm Dragon from unleashing his charged-up attack on the Avatar of the Winds, defeating it, now leaving the Avatar of the Dragonflight, the most powerful of the Avatars as the last Avatar standing, but now leaving the Storm Dragon needing to recover once more before he can charge his attack again. The battle against the undead druids of Brocliand rages on, as the archers and mages continue to focus their attacks on the archdruid Malthus, hoping to defeat him and break the back of the druid resistance. The soldiers fight valiantly, pressing their advantage against the druids, but find it difficult to make any significant progress. The Storm Dragon, now recovered from its battle with the Avatar of the Winds, begins to circle above the battlefield, observing the ebb and flow of the fight between the Ice Legion and the undead druids of Brocliand. It takes in the sight of the archers firing arrows at archdruid Malthus, the mages casting spells to weaken and confuse the druids, and the soldiers engaging them in melee combat. The Storm Dragon hovers nearby, ready to aid at a moment's notice. The Storm Dragon now begins charging up his attack again, to use to defeat the Avatar of the Dragonflight. The battle against the undead druids of Brocliand continues to rage. The archers and mages focus their attacks on the archdruid Malthus, knowing that if they can defeat him, the rest of the druids will crumble. The soldiers engage the druids in melee combat, using their training and weapons to try and overcome the undead warriors. The Ice Legion's archers, recognizing the importance of taking out the Avatar of the Dragonflight, begin to focus their attacks on it, while the Storm Dragon readies itself for another charged-up attack. Meanwhile, the soldiers continue to fight bravely against the undead druids of Brocliand, using their skills and training to try and overwhelm the druids in melee combat. The mages, having recovered from the druids' earlier surprise attack, renew their assault on the Avatar of the Dragonflight, using their combined elemental powers to weaken it further. As the storm dragon finished charging up its attack, it lets out a deafening roar, unleashing all of its power upon the avatar of the dragon flight. The ice mages and dragons join in, using their elemental magic to amplify the storm dragon's attack. The avatar of the dragon flight, already weakened by the Ice Legion's assault, he's no match for the combined might of the storm dragon and its allies. With a thunderous crash, the avatar is defeated, leaving only the archdruid Malthus standing as the last of the druids. The battle against the undead druids of Broclion continues to rage. The archers and mages focus their attacks on the archdruid Malthus, knowing that if they can defeat him, the rest of the druids will crumble. The soldiers engage the druids in melee combat, using their training and weapons to try and overcome the undead warriors. The storm dragon now lays recovery, and once he is done, he will be able to use his charged attack to defeat Archdruid Malthus. The battle against the undead druids of Broclion continues to rage. The archers and mages focus their attacks on the Archdruid Malthus, knowing that if they can defeat him, the rest of the druids will crumble. The soldiers engage the druids in melee combat, using their training and weapons to try and overcome the undead warriors. The storm dragon, having recovered from its previous battle, takes to the skies once more, circling high above the battlefield. It watches as the Ice Legion continues to fight valiantly against the druids, impressed by their determination and skill. The storm dragon hovers nearby, ready to aid at a moment's notice. Should its help be needed, the storm dragon begins charging up his attack to use to defeat Archdruid Malthus. With the Archdruid Malthus weakened, a lone figure emerges from the ranks of the Ice Legion soldiers, revealed to be their legendary commander, Lord Winterborn himself. He charges forward, his sword of ice and fire burning with determination, and challenges the Archdruid Malthus to a duel. That will decide the fate of the battle. The Storm Dragon, sensing the importance of this duel, decides to remain neutral and watch from a distance. It hovers in the air, its icy breath sweeping across the battlefield as Lord Winterborn and Archdruid Malthus clash in a furious battle of elemental magic and swordsmanship. Their confrontation is so intense that it seems to pause the rest of the battle around them, as all eyes are drawn to this epic clash between two legendary figures. The Storm Dragon watches with interest as Lord Winterborn expertly wields his sword of ice and fire, using its elemental properties to both defend against and attack the Archdruid Malthus. The Archdruid, on the other hand, relies heavily on his control over nature and his mastery of druidic magic to try and overwhelm Lord Winterborn. The battle rages on for what seems like an eternity, neither combatant gaining an obvious advantage. Meanwhile, the rest of the Ice Legion continues to fight bravely against the undead druids of Broclion, pushing them back towards the edge of the forest. The soldiers, aided by the mages and archers, manage to defeat several more druids, thinning their ranks and making it harder for them to withstand the combined might of the Ice Legion and the Storm Dragon. The duel between Lord Winterborn and Archdruid Malthus reaches its climax as both combatants grow, increasingly tired from their relentless onslaught. Lord Winterborn, sensing an opening, delivers a devastating blow to the Archdruid, knocking him off balance. Seeing their leader weaken, the remaining druids begin to falter, and the tide of battle begins to turn in favor of the Ice Legion. And with the opportunity given, the Storm Dragon unleashed his charged attack upon Archdruid Malthus, defeating him. With their leader slain, the remaining druids were left leaderless and demoralized. They fought on for a short while longer, but it was clear that their resistance was soon to crumble. The Ice Legion, emboldened by their recent successes, pushed forward with renewed vigor, overwhelming the undead druids of Broclion and driving them back deeper into the forest. The Ice Legion now finally moves toward the temple churchdom of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius to claim the core sacred relic they fought that entire battle for. The temple churchdom of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius is a grand structure built from the finest marble and adorned with intricate carvings depicting the life and deeds of the legendary ruler. The entrance is guarded by a pair of massive statues carved in the likeness of the God Emperor himself, holding aloft golden scepters that glow with an ethereal light. The air inside the temple is thick with the scent of incense, and the echoes of ancient hymns sung in praise of the God Emperor and his eternal rule. The Emperor of Frostreach steps forward and claims the coarse sacred relic that once belonged to God Emperor Marcus Aurelius, his ancestor that now belongs to him, the Emperor of Frostreach, Emperor Aldrin. As he holds the relic aloft, he feels a surge of power course through him, a connection to the past, to the great ruler who had once ruled over all. The storm dragon, sensing the change in power dynamics, bows its head in submission to the new master of the core sacred relic. And then, sounds can be heard outside as the undead druids of Brocliant, including Archdruid Malthus, as well as the Avatar of the Waves, the Avatar of the Wines, and the Avatar of the Dragonflight, all bow to him as well, to the holder of the core sacred relic, to the ancestor and true heir of the god, Emperor of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire Marcus Aurelius, to Emperor Aldrin, the undead druids, as well as the avatars, all swear their loyalty and fealty to him, pledging to serve and protect him with their lives, and to aid him in any way they can, as they now see him as their true master and ruler. The storm dragon, still bowing its head in submission, watches on, its gaze locked on the Emperor of Frostreach, a sense of awe and reverence emanating from it. The Ice Legion and Emperor Aldrin, followed by the Storm Dragon, the Avatars, and the Undead Druids all return to the USA, the core sacred relics successfully retrieved. As they make their way through the lands, the people of the USA look upon them with awe and reverence, recognizing the significance of their victory and the power that now resides within their midst. Emperor Aldrin, now strengthened by the core sacred relic and the loyalty of his subjects, begins to rebuild the empire, restoring it to its former glory.